talk about like just becoming a better communicator and using that to then monetize whatever it is, the thing that you do, right? And so monetize your genius, your expertise, sell more of your product, your service. I think even just to hold on to your career and job. I know there's so much happening in the tech space, and I think if you can with some really dope skills, you can go a really long way. And so I'm waiting for Odell. We're going to have this conversation. Also because I love bantering with this man on Facebook because we have some interesting polarized opinions on things, and then we agree on quite a bit of things. And so,
a little bit.
Up, man? How are you?
Living the dream. It's
yeah.
a great day. Getting some grown-up stuff done before the holiday. How are you?
Good. What part of the world? So you're home?
I am home. Yes.
Okay. So what part of the world are you in right now?
We're in North Carolina.
Okay. So one, Odell, like I said, I love challenging you. I think you challenged me back on your really amazing Facebook messages around like being a better communicator, people needing to learn how to sell, and then like monetizing your message, right? And so I just wanted to have a conversation around that. I know we've been trying to do some things this year. And so being able to be in conversation with you today is something that I wanted to do. And so you've been like teaching people how to communicate, right, for a really long time. Like when did that become important to you? And like, why is that important to you right now?
Well, communication is everything. And I believe like when I went to school, I majored in communication because I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I would always communicate. And I wanted to play basketball. I know you worked, in sports for a while, and I wanted to play basketball. I was a pretty decent basketball player. And I remember when my AAU team won a national championship, and I was all excited, and I told my dad, I'm going to the NBA, Pops, like get ready. And my dad said to me, I'll never forget, he said, you'll probably make more money with your mind than you will your body. And I was like, okay, well, what does that really mean? I really didn't know then. But I was always the kid that got in trouble for talking in class. I was always the kid that wanted to lead the group presentations in college and stuff like that. So communication was just kind of a natural progression. And then Felicia, I got involved in law enforcement right after school. I graduated undergrad right when the last recession was popping off and there were jobs. And I got a job in law enforcement. I remember my field training officer saying that it doesn't matter how big you are, strong you are, fast you are, this is going to keep you safe, your mouth. It's all about communication. It just brought it back full circle, that everything in life is communication, and the ability to do that really dictates our success in life.
Mm-hmm. Why does it dictate our success?
Because the only way that you will open yourself up to transactions is through communication. Mm-hmm. So whatever you want to do, and whether that's in a relationship, and we're not talking about monetary transactions at this point, but the better communicator you are, the better your relationships are. The better communicator you are, the better you are in a job interview. The better communicator you are, the more ability you have to elocute and articulate what you have as value to somebody else to buy from you. And if you can't communicate with others, then you probably can't communicate to yourself that well too. And so if you're not honest with yourself, you're not aware with who you are, then and it all boils down to communication, like every single part of it, even in the tech world that you do so well in. It's all about communication.
Yeah. I find it interesting because I think like you'll watch or look at studies or read studies, and on one end it talks about like, the majority of people, their biggest fear is like communicating on a stage, right? Like they rather do anything else, poke their eye out, like chop off a lip, like than communicate. And then on the other end, I think there's a lot of people that that devalue communication, if that makes any sense, right? And then there's people maybe like me, me and you in the middle, that like fully understand that being a master communicator puts you at constantly delivering in like the top two levels of value, right? Communicator and imaginator are like the top two. And so like you can have an amazing idea, you can have amazing product, but if you don't know how to communicate that, if you don't know how to showcase the value of that, if you don't help people understand how that solves a problem for them, like no matter what you create, it ultimately doesn't matter at the end of the day if you cannot communicate that, right? So one, I think like understanding how valuable communication is and how it affects our everyday life, like you said. And then the other part of that is getting really comfortable with being able to do that. And so what got you comfortable? Because I've seen you speak and you're brilliant at what you do. Like, what got you comfortable? Was it the 10,000 hours or you know, this not Seth Godin, Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000, like, what was it that got you comfortable and over the fear that so many people face in order to say like, this is my jam, I can do this?
I think the short of it is, Felicia, I've always wanted to be rich.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, you know, even going back to basketball, I wanted to play basketball because that's what I saw. You know, I saw Allen Iverson, I saw Kobe Bryant, and all those guys. Like, they make a lot of money. So I was like, ooh, I could do this. And even in sports, it was like the leaders of the team, they were the ones that, you know, communicated the most on defense. They were the ones that, so I was always like that. If you ask my parents, I was always talkative. So I don't know, like, when I got comfortable in it, I think it points to the 10,000 hours because I think there's a certain amount of talent that some people have, but most of it is that skill. Because you can be a good talker. I know you've seen this. We've seen this. Somebody's a really good talker, but when they get on stage, it doesn't translate. So
Yeah.
I think when I first started, I was kind of like that. Like, I just kind of talked, but I got comfortable in it when I started working in places that it mattered. And I owe it to law enforcement a lot. When you go into a block of 45 men in a jail that don't want to be there, and you're 23 years old right out of college and you have to make them lock down, your public speaking skills are gonna like show themselves. So it was
persuasion skills.
Yeah, you got to,
yeah.
or you don't work. So that it was kind of like that, being in those predicaments. Also, once I started following, you know, the giants in our industry, the Lisa Nichols of the world, the Les Browns, the Zig Ziglars, and I would see the command that they had on stage, I was like, okay, I can't hoop no more. I got to figure something out. And it was like, communication has to be it. And just doing it constantly, even before, you know, before social media, before lives, going to meetings, Toastmasters meetings, going to just community service events where my friends had nonprofits, just standing and speaking and welcoming and emceeing, it just kind of got in my DNA at that point, and it became an obsession. It became a literal obsession. And I think a lot of times when people look at high income skills like public speaking, like copywriting, like, they don't do it where it matters. And because they don't do it where it matters, they never really get that, they never get that feeling in their heart or in their gut to do it well. And so then they don't master it. And I think that's really what it is. I mean, it's as unsexy as it is. I've been obsessively communicating since I was 21 years old.
Yeah. Joyful Poet said, yes, finding ways to leverage our skill set is a high value role. Like, absolutely, right? So it's interesting because I was the opposite, right? Like, I remember you saying I did work for law enforcement. That's one opposite. I'm just giving you a hard time. But I like, if you would ask anyone that knew me back in like middle school, high school, probably the majority, like halfway through college, I was a wallflower, right? Like, I could have like small group setting conversations, but I was largely terrified to like use my voice. And I remember a mentor of mine when I started doing like these, I used to do like college and scholarship trainings because I was a C student who won a bunch of money to go to college. And then all my mom's church friends wanted to know like how you do it too, right? So I started doing workshops that way. But even then I was like still like, here's the information and then like, let me, you know, run off. And a mentor of mine was just like, you know, closed mouths don't get fed. And I know that's a very, we use that term all the time, but like this is 19 years ago. I'd never heard it before. And it was that, you know, those moments when like someone literally snatches your edges and you're just like, oh my God, you're right. Like I'm hungry because I'm afraid of people. I'm not using my words. I'm starting to show up in the right rooms because people are telling me like, this is how you learn. And I was like a sponge of this stuff, but I still didn't understand like, hey, I have an idea and I'm being passed up because I'm not communicating that idea. It's in my head, it's in my heart, but it's not like coming out of my mouth, right? And then it was like you said, then it becomes like repetition. Like the only way that you get, like literally the only way that you get better at being a communicator is by communicating. Like there literally is no other way. There's no juice that you can drink. There's no barbell that you can pull up. Like there's nothing that you can do but communicating more. And so what is your advice to people just around like getting that those 10,000 hours now? Because I think when you and I got it, like social media wasn't like the thing, right? And like there wasn't this chance where somebody, while you're on stage and maybe you're fumbling through your material to like build up your confidence, that someone doesn't pull a camera and like look at this person, like because I think that's a lot of people's fear. So like what would you say to people now on like how do they get to be a better communicator when maybe the fear is like all these eyes are going to see me while I'm working through becoming better?
Yeah, that's a
And that was
great.
like a long way to ask that
Yeah,
question.
that's a great question. And what's interesting with that is you said it like when we first started. I first started in 2007, 2008, and you know you didn't wake up. Even then, you didn't wake up with your phone next to you back then. So it's kind of like you had to get real time. Like you had to get in front of real people or go to the good old mirror and practice. And I would say one thing for people is don't be afraid to give your keynote to nobody
Yeah.
or give your presentation to nobody. If that's a job interview, like don't be afraid to do that. Our brains, and you've talked about this before in different videos you share, like our brains don't understand the difference between fantasy and reality. They just understand like it's done. So for you to practice, for you to get in those 10,000 hours, you might be like, Odell, Felicia, I don't have a stage that I'm going to. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, use this platform. Get on Instagram Live and have a message ready, and you talk to this camera device like nobody's there, and you just pour your energy into it. Even if one person shows up, if nobody shows up, don't be afraid to give a keynote by yourself. Also, you have to think about the different elements of public speaking that I talk about. The first element is that platform speaking that most people think about traditionally, but then there's interviewing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're talking to another human being like we're talking now, it will help you with your public speaking. Because one thing I teach my new speakers on, I let them know when you're talking about stuff that you know about, when you're talking about stuff that you're passionate about, it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to interview, I interview myself fully. It's gonna sound kind of crazy. I interview myself every single day.
Yeah. What do you say?
The grocery store, I'm like, Odell, we just want to know like that $1 million launch that you pulled off. Like, how did you do it?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll talk about it. I'll go do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm giving an articulate answer to this person. When Oprah had her show, I was like, I'm gonna be on Oprah, and I be on Oprah. This is Ellen. And so you have to think about those things. Listen a lot, because the best speakers are the best listeners.
Yeah.
Listen. So listen to the questions. Don't be like politicians and somebody asks you a direct question and you go all around the world talking about everything else except answer a direct question. And that helps you because a lot of times people think that they need to be long-winded when they're giving responses, but you just need to be succinct. You just think you need to be direct. And another thing that I would say is use Zoom to its maximum capability. If you're serious about communicating, like if you want to be a public speaker, if you want to, pitch for a grant or a business proposal or anything like that, get on Zoom. We get our friends, we get our family together for all these different things for holiday season and all that stuff. Say, hey, look, fam, look, friends, I'm trying to go for this grant, or I'm trying to be a public speaker, or I'm trying to do this. So I'm going to hop on Zoom. I need 8 of y'all to hop on Zoom and just listen to this pitch and talk about it in real time. Mm-hmm. You have to have that real time practice if you want to do it to make money.
Yeah.
Now, just want to do it just to, get a better job. It's kind of the same thing, mm-hmm. but you also need to understand it. And you said this when your mentor or whoever said that closed mouths don't get fed. If you're not speaking up in context on your job or in your business, then they'll look over you. Mm-hmm. What I mean by in context, when it's applicable. You don't have to be the only person. Hey, I got something to say. I just wanted to say happy Monday, everybody. Motivational Monday. I just wanted to let y'all know that you can be great. You don't have to be all that extra if you don't want to be. That doesn't fit your personality. Yeah. What you do need to do is, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any follow-ups or feedback? Yes, I would like to. And then you give an answer, an articulate answer in context. And so those are the things that I would say for anybody looking at this. About how you can get those hours in, even if you're not on a real stage.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's like, it's taking the big elephant and like breaking it down into like small steps, small habits that you can do every day. And I think so many times, like we're so anxiety ridden about communicating that like, that's the only thing that we focus on, right? Like, what if I stutter? What if I mess up? Like I know, like, you shared the stage with some of like the greats. I've shared the stage with some of the greats. I've been behind the scenes with some of the greats, and they still practice. Like, they're behind the stage, still doing like vocal exercises. I've like shaken their hands, and their hands are sweaty. Like, they're still human beings, right? And then like the other part that's really interesting is like, if you've ever been in the audience, like oftentimes what ends up ending up on YouTube is much more polished sometimes than the actual presence or presentation on stage. All the ums come out and like all these things, and I was just like, man, this person says a lot, and they're literally like, and so I think we get so bogged down on the message being perfect as opposed to like making sure that what we say, we communicate it clearly. And there's an actual transformation that happens as a result of us communicating, right? Like the condition of that person or that business or that organization or that audience should be different as a result of like experiencing you and your words. But this whole like interviewing yourself, like at the group, like I love that, right? Because it's like you're preparing for the moment. And it really relates back to what you said about like I played basketball as well. And it's just like, you practice way more than you actually like game day, right? Like I remember in high school, a game day season was like, I don't know, maybe 12 or 20 games, but we practiced every day for 6 months, right? And so you're practicing more. And it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people are just afraid to be with themselves until like that moment. You gotta say something.
Ooh, I just, like being afraid to be with yourself, that is, I just want to hit on that a little bit, because like your ability to communicate is how you communicate with the world is how you communicate to yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you're, like you said, thinking about, what if I mess up? What if then you think less of yourself. You have to understand that everybody is human and you will mess up.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Hey, I can't right now. I was just in Dallas. My watch won't sync back to my iPhone. Like, well, I don't know what the world is going on. It's messing up. But I'm not throwing the Apple Watch away. I'm not throwing Apple away. And so we have to get out of that and understand that we can make an impact even if we're imperfect.
Yeah.
And being able to make an impact is all about how you communicate that. And you told the story about sharing the stage with big names. I'm a good friend with Jay Harris, ESPN, and we spoke at a conference. He keynoted, and I spoke later. And I was like, man, Jay, you know, you did a good job and everything. And he was like, yeah, so like, give me some feedback, man. Like, let me know. I was like, what? I said, what you mean? Give me some feedback. And he was like, you're speaking later, right? He said, I want to be front row for you. And I'm like, wow. Like that again. I remember watching Jay Harris on TV when I was a kid. Like and he's like asking me, like, hey man, like, let me know what you think. And so we're always thinking like that. And you always will be thinking like that. You're always going to be wondering to somebody who you look up to, someone who you admire. You're going to say, is there something I can do? Is there something, maybe if I could say that better? But you just got to make it happen in real time. Yeah. And when you do it, you'll find that you're not as good as you think you are in real time. And then you'll get a little bit better. And the same thing goes with you monetizing it. And I heard this, Charles Barkley said it. He was talking about something different, but I think he was talking about golf or something like that. And he was like, I just don't understand why I can't get better. And I think Kenny Smith, they were on inside the NBA. Kenny Smith was like, you're not good enough to be mad. Good enough. Like you're just not good enough. And so that was a different point of view, but to bring it back to what we're talking about is in order for us to make money from our message, we have to continually articulate that value first to us. You have to believe that what you have to say is going to change somebody else's life. You also have to know your audience. Yeah. Because if you don't know your audience, then you're just trying stuff out of the wind, and then you increase your anxiety. If I'm going into a room of college students, I'm like, okay, what are they thinking about? What are they wondering about? One thing I know that they're not wondering about is if I stutter or say or ah. They're not thinking about that. First of all, they're like, who's this guy? He's probably going to be boring. Never heard of him before. So that's what their mindset is thinking about. If I go into a room of educators, like I just left not too long ago, they're probably thinking about, okay, what does this person have to teach us? I'm not sure why I'm here exactly. It's a professional development, but what am I supposed to learn? So the first thing that you have to do when you're communicating is understand, well, who is this message going to? What is going to be in the best interest for them? And then once I know that, it'll ease your anxiety a little bit.
Nice. I mean, you hit it right on the head, right? Like their problem is bigger than your presentation, like literally in their mind at all times, right? Like you don't like understand, huh?
I was saying, somebody write that down.
That needs to be on a t-shirt.
In your presentation, write that down.
But it is, right? Like, and until you either like acknowledge that, like address that, they can't hear anything that you're saying, right? Like, and then like you communicate, and like you can communicate the value all you want, but like if you don't put it in a way that like lessens the noise in their head of like, this is what I'm dealing with right now, then you don't get to have like the space in their head that you need to have in order to deliver your thing. Like nothing, you could be like, at the end of this presentation, I'm gonna give somebody $1 million, but like if their thing is like, I am thirsty, I am so thirsty, like I can't even sit through this presentation, I'm gonna get up and leave because like this person didn't address my thirstiness first, right? Like, and maybe that's not the best example because thirstiness means something else, but like you have, but and that goes across with anything, right? It's like investor meetings, right? Like, yes, this person has the money, but like there's a reason why they want to invest, or there's a reason why they will not invest. And like, how are you communicating to that person the value that aligns with whatever problem that they're trying to solve or whatever they care about? You know, if it's a group of educators, yeah, they're educators, but there's so many things that they're dealing with in this moment. You got to address that thing first, and then let them know this is a value that you bring in helping them solve that problem or get through that transformation. And I think enough people don't realize that. They just like spew, right? Like, and I often tell either the students in my mastermind or just like my staff, I'm like, before you pitch something, you should be asking questions. Do not just go in and like, blah, 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 this is what we have to offer, because more than likely you're not going to be selling what they're buying. And like, if you're not selling what you're buying, you're wasting their time and you're wasting theirs. And so the only way to know if you're selling what they're interested in buying is literally by asking them, like, what are your priorities right now? Like, what is keeping you up at night? What does success look like? Like, these are all questions I immediately ask, because their answer is going to inform how I wrap the value of what I have, so that so that they understand it, right? But Odell,
Well, hold on.
let's switch. Oh,
Before you go, before you go on, I gotta emphasize that point of what you just said. And that goes back to be a better communicator, you have to be a better listener.
Yeah.
And you have to know what questions to ask as it relates to what people need. And I've started doing this. I probably started doing this in the last few years, especially it started with the pandemic when we were giving a lot of virtual presentations. I said, hey, what do you want? Like, I would ask the audience, like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Like, that would be an opening question that I would ask an audience. What do you want? And then they're like, what do you mean? And then you wrap a frame around it as it relates to the topic of the time. But like, what do you want as it relates to DE&I? Like, what does that look like? You know, what, like you said, what does success look like? That has to be one of the biggest things that you all take from this, is when you're communicating, transferring it's all about me getting it right versus what do they need? What do they need? What do they want? What do they desire? Then once you figure that out, you can match the skill set or match the value with their desire.
Mm-hmm.
When I was little, my dad, I would always say, Daddy, I got a question. He would say, I got an answer. Let's see if they match. And so you have to always make sure that you're asking whoever you're communicating to, like, what is it that you want? What is it that you desire? And then if you can't provide it, that's an even, okay, you know what? That doesn't fit, or I'm not able, I'm not capable at this point, but I know somebody that can be, or I can provide resources. And that also takes a lot of pressure. When I started doing sales calls and training people to do sales calls like that, it was so much easier. So much easier. Like, oh, so why did you schedule this call today? I'm excited to hear about that. Like, what may, and then it's like you're really in a power position,
right?
But also you're in a service position, because they could literally say, well, I'm looking for somebody to, talk about unicorns and rainbows. That's not what we do. That's not what we talk about, but I appreciate you. And then you can save people a lot of time. So I just wanted to emphasize that so much. Like, if you really learn the audience that you're speaking to, and then we go deeper into monetization and learning your avatar and what they want and all that stuff, it'll be a whole lot easier to make money.
Nice. I love that. And I find it real fascinating how many people don't want to slow down to just do that. But like you can become so much more effective and successful by literally just like switching the dynamics of what you were taught, or like the cadence in which you were taught. However we picked up that bad habit, all of us have picked that up for a lot of people, right? And then by literally just turning the switch of saying, before I pitch, let me genuinely be interested in the person. Let me genuinely be interested in like having some interesting questions to ask them. And then let me literally listen. Not listen for like the next best response, but literally just like listen. And let them fill the void of like whatever that uncomfortable gap in or anything like that. And I'll never forget this lady who's been, I can say a mentor, right? Like I was in her program, her accelerator years ago, on like social impact and stuff like that. And I remember when she was teaching us about like, pitching, and when you're starting to pitch for like larger like investment or larger donations coming into your organization, she was just like, say the number of what you need and then shut the heck up. And so she was like, if it's $500,000, just say, I need $500,000, and then be quiet. And she was like, what happens is, because we're like, it's the first time that we've asked for something so big, the microsecond of silence, we start filling it in And what we usually do is not fill it in with like more value added stuff. We immediately start detracting from that. But you know, you can say, but today, you know, you can get it for $9.99. Like we'll immediately start doing that because the discomfort of the silence. And so she was just like, just literally like say the thing that you need or ask the question that you need to ask and don't say anything else, and like literally let that person fill in that awkward silence. And usually when there's an awkward silence, like they come on your side as opposed to you deducting from whatever you asked for. So I thought that was interesting. Robert said for something earlier, facts. Believe in yourself or no one else will, as it shows the way in which you speak to others about your gift. Thanks, Robert. Thanks for sharing that.